I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. These are Paul's words in our second reading today, and they invite us to think about our life in maybe a different way than we're accustomed to, certainly a different way than the world often invites us to think about our lives. If you look at any kind of advertisement in the world today, there's generally the same underlying message, which is that you should maximize your comfort and convenience right now, today. But Paul offers a totally different perspective by likening our life to running a race towards a goal, and everything being part of that objective or mission. Growing up, one of our family favorite movies was the 1981 film Chariots of Fire. It follows two British runners who make their way to the 1924 Paris Olympics. It's based on a true story. And at one point, the Scottish runner Eric Liddell gives a speech, and he says, "I want to compare faith to running in a race. It's hard, requires concentration of will and energy of soul." Anyone who's ever run a race of any distance really knows that the experience is not exactly pleasant. In fact, the first word often used to describe it would really be pain. Running a race is equal parts physical ability, but also the mental stamina to keep pushing yourself forward. The runner has to remain mindful of the fact that they have a destination, a goal. Otherwise, they might begin to lose heart or succumb to the stress and discomfort, forgetting that it's temporary, that they're only working towards this goal, this finish line. And so the difficulty is a temporary thing and serves towards that final goal. As disciples, you and I can at times also start to flag in our efforts to faithfully follow Jesus. Like the runner, sometimes we become weary from the effort. Other times we can allow ourselves to get distracted by things along the way or lose track of the primary purpose, the reason that we're striving forward in the first place. And again, the siren song of our culture doesn't help this either. Often the culture proclaims that there is no race, that you and I are already at the finish line and we ought to just make ourselves comfortable. But the life of faith really is like that running race. It is at times inherently challenging and difficult, and so we really ought to expect a certain degree of difficulty or inconvenience. Every runner, as soon as they get a few steps into the race or a few miles, is not surprised that it becomes uncomfortable or unpleasant. And in the same way, when we find ourselves at times tempted to become discouraged or frustrated or annoyed, whether it's with life in the parish or church politics or with the person next to us, we can remember that we're running in a race. We're, in a way, required to put up with a certain amount of imperfection or discomfort in order to accomplish that primary goal, to reach the finish. It's not unlike a family road trip. My family used to always drive down to Alabama, and it was inherently inconvenient to stuff 8 of us into the car. But we had to remember that it was to get to the goal, and so we endured a certain amount of inconvenience in order to get to that finish line. The same is true for the life of faith. Above all, this means staying faithful to Jesus throughout our life and offering our lives in service to God and neighbor. It means proclaiming the gospel message of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, even when it's difficult or unpopular to do so. I think there's maybe a couple of really practical applications for this theme of running the race of faith for us today. One practical application has to do with the commitments that we have in our own lives, our responsibilities, and the commitments that we've made. Every vocation in life has certain things that we're obliged to do. And as disciples of Jesus, we all have certain obligations and commitments as well. Sunday Mass and daily prayer, care for the poor and care for the church. On the one hand, these obligations can be a great source of life and joy. I know for myself that the promises I made at my ordination give my life a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, and a great deal of fulfillment. You can think of a newly married couple. They rejoice at the opportunity to make vows to each other, to express their dedication and their love. And so commitment can be a great source of joy. But at other times, it can also make demands on us that are challenging to fulfill. Following Jesus is sometimes hard. Sometimes it's hard to get up for Mass on Sunday, or to speak up for the faith in a difficult scenario, or to follow the other obligations of our faith. And so there's a difficult side as well. I think Paul's words about running the race of faith can encourage us in this respect. On the one hand, they help to normalize some of our struggles. Every runner expects that they're going to get tired at some point, that the part of the race is going to be hard. At the same time, the runner has the tenacity to keep pressing ahead and to not give up. They don't run only when it's easy or convenient. And so Paul is really challenging us to do the same, even when the going gets tough. The second maybe practical application is that the idea of running a race and connecting that to faith gives us maybe a different perspective on the sacrament of confession as well. The fact is that none of us is perfect in remaining faithful to the Lord or to our commitments. We all fall short. Like a runner, we sometimes have moments where we lose heart, we stop trying, or even give up altogether, where we feel like we can't go on. The sacrament of confession is a time where we're reconciled with Jesus, where we receive his healing grace and mercy. To maybe mix metaphors or extend it a little bit, we could think about car racing. I like to think of the sacrament of confession like a pit stop. When we're worn down or even broken down, the sacrament of reconciliation reorients us toward Jesus. It fills us with his mercy and grace, renews our strength and our resolve to continue pressing ahead and running the race. Whether it's F1 or NASCAR, no racer goes the whole race without a pit stop. It's absolutely essential. Nor is it a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a source of strength. And so if you find yourself struggling maybe to continue running in that life of faith, I would recommend going to the sacrament of confession. I think you'll find it to be a great source of renewal, as I know I have for myself. Maybe we can circle back to that second reading to conclude now. In the end, Paul ends up giving his entire life for the faith as a martyr, and the passage that we just heard proclaimed is Paul's reflection as he approaches the end of his life. He knows that the Roman authorities are going to condemn him, and eventually he will be killed. But he doesn't see his life as a waste, even with how it's going to end. Rather, Paul describes it as a libation, that is, an offering that's poured out to God as a kind of sacrifice. Paul sees his life and even his death as an expression of gratitude and love and dedication to God. In his life, Paul experienced, on the one hand, some incredibly difficult moments. If you look at 2 Corinthians 11, he gives a whole litany, and he went through some very difficult and challenging times. At the same time, Paul also experienced incredible joys as well, following the Lord. And this is really what running the race of faith will always entail for each of us. Times of difficulty and painful sacrifice, but also moments of profound joy and consolation. So as we continue with this Mass today, as we approach Jesus, as Jesus is made present to us in the Eucharist, as he's offered up, let's offer ourselves and our lives as well. We're invited to renew our own commitment to the Lord, to serve him and to love him with our lives, to renew our commitment to our various obligations in life and our various vocations. Let's pray today for the grace to be faithful to the Lord and to see the race to its end.